cartoons for quite a while, little kids cartoons. And what I knew was that this was a completely different animal. The writing was more like a radio play. It had all these huge issues and ethics and morality and these. So I knew it was different, and that's what attracted me to it. And I was right, and I think that's why 30 years later people are still rewatching the old one, because it aimed like this, over kids' heads. It was made for kids, aimed over their heads, and kids absorbed these huge lessons without even realizing that they were absorbing them. And it's still relevant today. So the writing, it's all hands set together. Eric and Julia Lawal, the writing and the original show is why we're still here talking about 97. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Matthew, talk to us about your X-Men origin. How were you first introduced?
Mine was actually through the Fox films. Oh, that was yours.
Also for Jack.
There are advantages to theater background. Yeah, mine was through, my original exposure to it was a comic here and there. I was in boarding school in England when the original show came out, so I didn't see it because of prison. So I would get, people would have comics, but it was never a continuous run. So you'd get one issue here, one issue there. Yeah. And they were cool, but every single issue, the team was different, who was on whose side was different, who was connected to who was different, and so you would only sort of get snippets. So I didn't really develop an understanding or an affection for it out of that. It was the Fox, live action films, but when I think back as well, I already knew all of the characters and I knew the basic setup, and I don't exactly know where that came from, just general osmosis through culture. But that was the first sort of continuous storyline that I saw with the live action. And then when this job came about, my homework was to go back and watch the original 5 seasons of the animated series, because I had an awesome job and my homework was brilliant. And so that's what sort of filtered in the middle. And then, just going to now, we have the beauty of the internet, so you're like, wait, who is that character? You can go and immediately find out their entire character history, their powers, their abilities, the 12 people who've been credited as their parents in different issues and the theories and things like that, and be like, I don't know what's happening, but everyone seems to be having a really good time.
For me, it was the original animated series back in Brazil, watching it probably, like everybody on a Saturday morning at my mom's kitchen, and that was probably one of maybe the first introduction to superheroes, and Wolverine was my favorite character, and then from there all the X-Men movies, a big fan, and then Logan and all of that, and then but yeah, it was the animated series.
This is gonna sound like a strange intro, but my first real intro to Marvel in general was the 2002 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and so a couple people know seen them, I think. It was when I saw those, I was like, there's this whole other world I didn't know existed, and so I was just swept in by the whole story, and I started to collect comics at that point. My favorite comic that I have is Spider-Man 50, where it's a Spider-Man No More, and it got Stan Lee and John Romita to sign it and everything. So I've been a nerd for a very long time. So that was my whole intro. And then, but what was weird is I somehow knew the X-Men animated series theme song already, and I didn't know when I heard it or how I heard it. It was just in my head, and I was like, that's bizarre. So maybe, I don't know, it was like a calling card to later in my life. But I of course watched the show, and it was such a magical time of cartoons. That Batman the animated series, Spider-Man animated series, all in the 90s. So X-Men was a natural progression, and I just loved the characters, and sitting here and getting to call Catherine a colleague of mine is the coolest thing in the world. Just to be with these people that I grew up with. But yeah, that was my intro to the X-Men world, and then the Fox movies as well. My friend and I watched them endlessly, and so I'm so happy to be here. But that's how I got into the mutant world.
Amazing.
My answer has always been the Fox films, but now that I really think about it, so when I was a kid in the 90s, back in the 90s, our social lives were not on our phones, they were in a mall, so I was always hanging out at the arcade at the mall, and I would watch I was a voyeur, I would watch other people play because I was crap at button mashing. And that's how, so Marvel vs. Capcom, the original X-Men, the animated series, the original X-Men video game, which makes no sense, but is so good. It was that really came first, and then the the movies, but I didn't really get into the animated series until my audition, because I was a Power Rangers fan, and I would come home from school and sit down and turn on the TV, and I would see the end credits of X-Men as the Power Rangers would start.
It's so fun to hear like how our stories are similar and dissimilar, and the points of commonality. I also, a child of the 90s, was, for me, it wasn't Saturday morning, it was after school. And I remember it would like run home, and it was that great lineup. It was with the Batman and X-Men, and I just fell in love with X-Men. And I remember feeling like, oh, I'm too old to be watching cartoons. Like no one's doing, like this is like, I had to keep it a secret. And then I discovered like coffee shop culture, and everybody at the coffee shop was talking about X-Men. It was like, oh, there's my people. Like I'm a coffee shop and X-Men kind of girl. And there was like debates about Beast this and Wolverine that, and I was introduced to the world of the comics through my friend, who then was like my coworker later at the coffee shop, and she would always just keep me updated about what's going on in the comics. And she's like, it's really deep. Like you're like, I don't know if I have enough time to get you caught up to speed. But eventually she did, and so yeah, when the audition comes, it's like childhood dreams coming true. Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of a similar experience.
Awesome. More